Yeah, I definitely relate to everything you all are saying. I think anxiety does play a huge role, especially as an adult, when you start to have so much to balance and you start to have more and more pile up on your plate. For me, there are times where I wake up with a lot of anxiety, then there are times that I just wake up feeling miserable. Like at that point, I feel like, and that's because I'm thinking like, oh man, I got this meeting, I got to lead in a little bit. And so when I have that miserable feeling, that automatically is like an indicator to me that, okay, you need to get into prayer, or, this is not going to be a great day. And so I feel overwhelmed usually with juggling relationships and responsibilities. And then I realize that I don't really have balance, or I don't operate well unless I have like time blocks in my day. So like designated time blocks scheduled out. And there are times where I want to make that time in the morning with God. So that's usually the best time for me. And then as my day goes on, and more things are starting to pile on, that anxiety starts to come back and it starts to feel overwhelming again. And then what I realize is I had to start like spending time with God while doing other things. So if I'm like, all right, I'm going to put this presentation together for work, I'm going to take a little 5 minute. I mean, obviously that's not multitasking, but I'm going to take 5 minutes away from that, read my devotional, get back into it. Or if I'm driving, that's time I'm spending with God. Or if I'm in the shower, or if I'm cooking, I got a sermon on or music playing. And I realize if I'm not doing that, everything just kind of falls apart. My heart is heavy, especially because I kind of relate to what Dante was saying, where you have other people to take care of. Like sometimes people are relying on you, even if it's not financial. Sometimes it's just moral support, emotional support. They need you, and that can be draining as well. And I recently had a friend call me up for a lot of emotional support for what she was going through, and that she was leaning on my strength, but I needed strength from God. Before I even spoke to her, I had to pray because, I'm dealing with stuff too, but I want to be her rock if I can, and I want to pull my strength from God. And so, and even with my mom, it's the same thing. So having my own anxiety in the things that I'm pursuing, pile that on top of trying to be there for other people, it can be very exhausting. And so for me, I have to have like those time blocks. But then as soon as something changes up, it falls apart again. So that's when I'm like, all right, I find myself praying a lot for God to help me organize my schedule, to help me not just make time for him, but just for things to be balanced in my life altogether. That was something I still pray for that. I prayed for years, and I've seen God put it together for me. And then when something new comes up, I find that I have to if I start feeling disconnected from God, I find that I have to fast now, because now I feel like everything's been piling on and I'm getting further and further away. And then even if it's not things in my outside world happening, it's up here, where my mind is busy and I need it to be calm and quiet, especially so that I can just remember to always put my burdens on, lay them at God's feet instead of me just trying to carry everything. And I find that I do that a lot, especially when that busyness gets in the way. So I definitely relate to what a lot of you, what you guys are talking about, for sure. And I think for me, I have moments where I feel like I'm prosperous and successful. And then, like I said, it falls apart. And then I got to pray and fast and get back into it. But for me, finding balance is just praying and then sometimes fasting and making those scheduled time blocks for everything.
Awesome.
Thanks, Kendra.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with a lot of what's been said. I would say that I was going to completely throw out the definition of balance. When you guys all talked about there's no balance, God is second to none, right? So I almost wanted to skip to the next question already. But so I know I've felt overwhelmed, but for a long time, I didn't know that I was experiencing anxiety and stress. I was just I would see the symptoms and I'd be like, no, but I have to do the work of the Lord, or I have to be present for these people. But there was stress attached to it. And I'm very self-reflective. So I didn't realize that it's not normal to continuously replay and rethink and just always thinking. And there was a point where I had to I got some revelation about just, this is worry, Crystal, and this is sinful. And you're operating not out of the source of God. So once I realized that, I kind of like you all, like I understood that I must not have been prioritizing my time with God, or at least the spiritual disciplines. Like I must have been just getting it in when I could, praying and worshiping. And that is, I don't know, I think about marriage and how like that could be disastrous, right? Like not setting aside intentional time to spend with the one that you love. And the people that I really respect in the faith, they would say things like, oh, the busier I get, the more intentional I am with the time that I spend with Jesus. And I would just be like, that sounds good for you. Meanwhile, they're healing the sick and raising the dead. And I'm like, oh, they're connected to the Lord, right? And they have time to be present and time to take care of the responsibilities. And it's not perfect. But once I started, like, just like a lot of you all, like putting my time with the Lord as a non-negotiable, like in my calendar, it's a non-negotiable. This has to happen. Then I started to see that there was ease, there was less stress, and there was the ability to manage time better. And it's not perfect, but praise God for his grace.